Jim also recorded with Boz Scaggs, Silk Degrees album, Harvey Mason. We mentioned the Blackbirds.
Yeah, Lowdown.
Narada Michael Walden. A lot of great drummers. Narada Michael Walden, Billy Cobham, Stanley Clarke on bass, George Duke, I think we mentioned, George Benson, Patrice Rushen, Bill Withers, Herbie Hancock. Can you maybe like touch on a few of those that kind of really stand out in your mind?
Well, Narda is a good friend, and he called me to sing on Whitney's first album. And, you know, Whitney Houston's, and he was also producing Gladys. He was producing Aretha Franklin's Freeway of Love. I sang on that. I sang so much in so many sessions. It was ridiculous, man. I can't even remember half of them. But I think I've sang with most of the big artists at Motown, including the Temps, the Four Tops, Stevie, Gladys, Whitney Houston, Anita Baker. You know, I sang on her first album. Oh my goodness, I got old timers. I can't remember all of them, but yeah, I feel really, you know, great about just being a singer.
Are there any sessions among those that maybe stand out because it was maybe really challenging to get it right, or maybe it was a really long session, or is there anything that kind of stands out? Maybe the power went out in the studio, I don't know, but something that makes you go, oh, I'll never forget that particular one.
Well, I think one of the strangest sessions I sang on was with Weather Report, Jaco Pastorius. And it's like Jaco, they wrote music that never had, like, you know how music sometimes has a key? Jaco and them they never had a key. You were just singing notes and notes and notes and notes and notes. And I was like, wow, this is strange. But I had a ball working with Jaco and Weather Report. You know, there were some other sessions that, you know, I guess when we did the cartoon series Goof Troop, my buddy Phil Perry sang the lead to that. And I went in and that was fun. But I've had a lot of fun going on the road with Phil Perry, James Taylor. Years ago, I even sang in the studio with Carole King. And I was a big fan. I went out and sang with Richard Carpenter a couple of times after Karen had passed. And they were one of my favorite groups of all time. I was in love with Karen Carpenter's voice. I thought she had the prettiest voice, literally, of all time, just incredible. But I've worked with so many different artists that, you know, I'm just in seventh heaven right now, just remembering some of them.
How do you kind of shift gears so much? I mean, you got to be so versatile, right? You go from, you know, pop to funk to R&B to jazz. How do you like switch gears like that and sort of be such a chameleon?
Well, it was partially college, because one day I got a phone call from Melissa Manchester and Dr. John. And Doc said, man, could you come down here to the studio? I want to meet you. So I drive down to the studio, and him and Melissa looked at me and they said, wait a minute, I thought you were white. You were on Dolly Parton's album. I said, yeah, I sang with Dolly Parton. And I sang with Stella Parton. I sang country and western. So I was shocked. I said, well, what did you want me down here? He said, I just wanted to meet you, man. You know, you sang on Dolly Parton's album. And I sang classical music, R&B, jazz. It was just years of singing in college. because we sang all kind of, you know, different genres, and it really was great.
Out of all those, would you say one style is the most challenging?
The most challenging is probably, I would think, classical music. It was really challenging, but it was actually, and now I take it back, it was actually easier than some of the jazz sessions, like the Weather Report session, but I enjoyed all of them. I just love music, and it didn't matter what style I got called to do, I was there to do it. Because I'm a strictly music lover. And I listen to classical music today. I listen to jazz. I listen to R&B. I listen to country and western. I listen to everything.
Well, Jim, who is somebody, maybe a producer, who's sort of the most demanding, or was a real perfectionist and just kind of like whipped your butt?
I never had one. You know, most people seem to have so much respect for me that they just kind of treated me special. And I even feel special because I go usually now and sing on The Simpsons. And one day I was there singing on The Simpsons at 20th Century Fox, and the engineer gave me one of the biggest compliments. He says, he had some of his friends there. He goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Jim Gilstrap. You know who he is? He's the legend." And I was like, I thought that was the biggest compliment because of working in all the different areas of music. And it was such a wonderful compliment, man, just to say, call him, he'll sing anything.
Was there anyone that you performed with that you were sort of surprised that they blew up as big as they did? I mean, we mentioned like Silk Degrees. I'm thinking probably didn't expect that to be just such a gigantic hit.
Well, there was one record that shocked me to death. And I was sight reading teaching to a young lady by the name of Cindy Heron. And she's in the group In Vogue. And when I first heard, she brought her record by, "Hold On to Your Love," I thought it was the worst record I'd ever heard. But I said, I better stop judging because it's like 6 months later, it's the biggest record in the country. So I said, don't judge music. Just listen and just enjoy it. You know, and I was never a fan of Mary J. Blige when she first came out. But lately I've heard her sing and she's knocking me out.
I agree I'm right with you on that. Yeah.
Well, I heard her singing on some TV show and she was all out of pitch with the orchestra. And I was like, oh, the poor girl. But lately, she's developed such a sound that I enjoy it, you know.
Did you catch her on the Oscars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've learned not to judge anybody. You know, don't judge them. Listen and learn, because that's what I'm still doing, is listening and learning. And I still enjoy everybody.
Now, Jim, we've mentioned a lot of these ladies already, but I mean, you've worked with Aretha, with Gladys, with Patti LaBelle, Anita Baker, Barbara Streisand, Linda Ronstadt, Roberta Flack. Gosh, I mean, all these incredible, the greatest female vocalists of like all time. What is it? Is there something special beyond what we've talked about already with you and your vocals that really make you mesh well with these great female singers?
Well, my favorite singers are the female singers. You know, one of my favorite singers is Dionne Warwick.
Mm.
When Dionne first started and Walk On By came out, I was in love with that record. And I was also in love with Backrack and David, and I'm so glad I got to be friends with them. But I just love the quality. When I used to listen to the Miracles, I never listened to Smokey. I was listening to Claudette Robinson. And there was a quality in females' voices that I don't hear in male voices. And Claudette had a quality I thought was so incredible. And when I tell her nowadays, she probably thinks I'm hitting on her, but there's a quality in her voice that just wipes me out. And especially Brenda Holloway. There's some quality in some of these female voices that just takes me to another level. You know, and I love female voices.
Do you think it's that they just bring a sort of like vulnerability or something like that that makes it a little different?
Well, I go for quality in voices. And there's a smoothness. There's a sound. One of my favorite voices is a young lady named Shantae Moore. Mm-hmm. When she sings, I get goosepimples. I think she's one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. Her and Sarita, you know. And I was crazy about Minnie Riperton. Mm-hmm. There are so many females, and probably the group of voices I love the most, they were the Andantes. You know who they were? Mm-hmm. They were the background singers at Motown. I remember a record called Ask the Lonely by the Four Tops.
Okay.
There are ladies singing on that, you know, and the quality in their voices, it's like, it just takes me to heaven. The Andantes. And we honored them at Heroes and Legends, which is a Motown show. And there was something about their voices I loved. And then there was a group called the Motown Blackberries. Out here, when the Motown moves from Detroit out here, they had another group of female singers. And they were called the Motown Blackberries. And they sang on all of Junior Walker's hit records. Mm-hmm. You know, What Does It Take? Mm-hmm. Those ladies that sang. And then there was another group of ladies that I was in love with that were at the record label from Philadelphia. You know, they sang on, one of my favorite singers is Felipe Wynn. Oh, yeah. But when he did Sadie, there's a group of ladies singing on that song. Just the quality in their voices. It's like, I'm in heaven. I sit here and listen to them all the time.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Jim. How much of that is attributable to their singing versus the producer getting that vocal sound?
Basically, it's the quality in their voices. Some people are born with it. And they have such a quality that when they open their mouths, I get goosepimples. And that's what I look for when I listen to a record. Most of the time, and believe it or not, my first favorite singers were the female white singers that were in like the 50s, who sang behind Sarah Vaughan and all these other singers. They had I met one lady out here that I loved her so much, Luli Jean Norman. I know you don't know who she is.
No.
But she sang on the Star Trek theme song.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, her voice used to wipe me out, but she used to sing on the Dinah Shore Chevy Show. And I loved her voice even then. There are singers out here now that it doesn't make, to me, it's not a racial thing, but I just love female voices. I guess because I'm a Scorpio and I love females, but their voices knock me out. And there's a whole bunch of Doris Day. I was in love with her voice.
Mm-hmm.
I still sit and listen to her now.
Did you ever get to do anything with Chaka Khan?
Not really. I've never worked with Chaka. I love Chaka's voice. So.
Yeah, she's my personal favorite, but that's the one person only person I can think of I didn't see on the list. So
oh, okay.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
No, I never had the pleasure of working on her records or anything.
She's probably like in the 1%.
Just 1% is probably right. But I love Chaka. She's a nice lady and a good friend.
Yeah. So what are the keys in your mind to being a successful session singer? If somebody with a decent voice came to you and said, Jim, I want to try to do what you did, what would you say? What would be your advice?
Well, my advice was which I give to most of the singers nowadays, learn to read music. Because if you can't read music, you're stuck in one area of the business. And a lot of my friends that are Black out here, they didn't learn to read music. So when it came time to do TV commercials, movies, and stuff where you had to read, they weren't there, but I was. Mm-hmm. So I tell them, study. You have to study in order to be good at what you do. And also make sure that you keep your pitch together. But I think mainly, I look back at the days when I was auditioning for people and they loved the fact that I read music. And then a lot of the singers out here don't.
Hmm. Does it kill you, that nowadays with the auto-tune and things that are just overproduced and, does that frustrate you with the way a lot of today's music is?
Not really. I know there are things that are being auto-tuned, but anything that'll keep a singer in pitch doesn't bother me.
Well, but sometimes it's a non-singer.
Well, that's true. Sometimes it's a non-singer. But I don't mind. There's all type of, creations in the music industry that really help not only singers, but musicians. So, I'm all for it. It's technology. And I love technology.
Do you have a top memory or story from being out on the road somewhere in all your years? Special experience. Maybe it was like a really big crowd. Maybe you met somebody. Maybe somebody fell off the stage. Whatever.
Oh, I think when I was out with Quincy's not a singer, right? So he had me singing one of Marvin Gaye's tunes. Mother, mother. He came out one night on the stage and took the mic from me, and I was supposed to sing the lead to it, and he started singing it. And the audience looked at him like, what in the world? So he realized he wasn't sounding too good. So he came back, "Here, strap."
What got into him?
Well, Quincy wanted to, he wanted to make sure he was a star. And I understand that, but when you don't sing, just do your instrumental thing and forget it. He's not much of a singer. So, I mean, that would be like me trying to play as good as Oscar Peterson or somebody. Ain't gonna happen, because I'm no Oscar Peterson or Art Tatum. There's a keyboard player that I love. His name is Johnny Costa. Never heard of him, right? You ever watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
A little.
And you remember the keyboard player that's playing on there? That's Johnny Costa.
Okay.
He's so bad that he scares me. And it's like, also there's a female by the name of Hazel Scott, who is one of my favorite keyboard players. And I think she was married to Adam Clayton Powell Jr. But she is one of the greatest keyboard players I've ever seen in my life.
What's her claim to fame?
Hmm?
What's her claim to fame?
She did movies with Lena Horne and people like that.
Oh, okay.
But, her claim to fame is she would sit there and play two pianos at once. And I mean, just kill it. It was so bad that I was just knocked out to see a talented person like that. I'm so grateful that God put people like her, Art Tatum, Nat King Cole, people who played the keyboard so good, because that's my favorite instrument. I'm glad I'm a singer, but love keyboard players.
Yeah. Yeah, when I think of keyboards, I mean, I love Herbie Hancock and
Herbie's just incredible.
Joe Sample, Bernie Worrell.
Yeah, Ray Charles.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite was Dave Grusin.
Yep.
I love Dave Grusin.
Bob James.
Bob James. Oh, yeah. David Benoit, Patrice Rushen.
Yeah.
My college classmate, Jerry Peters. He is incredible. But I love keyboard players, and I will continue to study this instrument, the keyboard, until I die. I'll never reach the level of a Johnny Costa from, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I'll never reach that level, but I'm going to try to. That's the one thing I always try to do, is continue to study no matter how long or how old I get. Because that's the key to maintaining your status in the business. Just continue to study.
So would you say that you're more accomplished now, say on the keyboard, than you were 20 years ago?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Because I can sit here now and play. I can sit here and do that and play. I never learned to sight read on the keyboard, but I did as a singer. So I'm actually sitting here learning how to sight read on the keyboard. I'm not going to stop studying until I end up in the hospital and I can't study. But the idea is to continue until I die.
Yeah, that's a great attitude.
Got to.
Yeah. Who today do you really like out there that's doing it? I think, you kind of mentioned a few people who are a little more contemporary, but is there anyone else that's relatively new to music that you are like, hey, I like that singer, or that person impresses me?
Well, there are some singers that I've seen even some of the ones on The Voice. There are some of them that are really incredible. And David, what's his name? He has all these young singers that come out and they sing classical music, they sing pop music, and some of the Disney singers, I've heard some great voices. You know, they still have them coming out.
Hmm.
And even keyboard players. I look on Facebook and I saw this little 3-year-old Japanese girl, and she was playing classical music like nobody's business. And I admire her because she's only 3 and she's already at a level where I'm still trying to get to.
Hmm.
You know, she's playing Bach, Beethoven, and all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, they scare me to death.
Well, some
But
people are just touched by God like that.
They literally are. And I'm going to continue to study, and like I said, until I drop. Because I love this instrument so much that I want to perfect it, you know, before I go. And I still got keyboard players like Stevie, Ray Charles, even the guitar player like Jose Feliciano, and some of the greats on these instruments. I sit and watch them and learn. You know, I want to play everything before I'm out of here.
Well,
never make it, but I'm gonna give it a good college try.
Well, we mentioned him, and you've worked with him. Another fair guitar player is George Benson. So,
oh, I love George. He's a good friend.
Yeah, amazing.
I love George. I love my buddy Ray Parker, Wah.
Oh yeah.
You know, and one of my what I think I probably admire, the people I admire most were Nelson Riddle, Gene Page, some of the Motown arrangers, because those songs wouldn't have been hit records without those arrangers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those are the guys that I admire. And Gene Page was one of the guys who did my records. And I love Gene and James Carmichael, who does Lionel Richie.
Mm-hmm.
But these are guys that I'd like to, you know, just give them their due. And especially Nelson Riddle. I love Nelson Riddle.
Yeah, that's going back a little.
Well, there was also a guy by the name of Mort Lindsay.
I remember the name.
I know his son Steve, and but his dad was one of my favorite arrangers. And Don Costa. I mean, there was some great things, you know, great guys out here.
Well, you touched on something. I mean, I don't think people realize, especially most lay people, I mean, how important the arranging is to the
That's
music.
the most important part of it.
I mean, and the gift that some of those guys have, like a lot of the people we've mentioned, Stevie, Quincy. Amazing, you know.
So I'm still learning.
You know, Jim, this show, as you know, is called Truth and Rhythm. So
okay.
I like to ask and put you on the spot a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. What to you brings you truth in the music that you do and you pursue? How do you know when it's true, the truth in the music?
Well, I think the truth in music is kind of a myth, because there's so much music, and I hear people go, yeah, that's, you know, years ago when I was at church, that's the devil's music. And I used to tell my grandfather, who was a preacher, how can you call that the devil's music? If you take away the lyrics from any song, how can you say any song is the devil's music? It's just music. You know, that's the truth of it, is the beauty that's in it. And I think because I'm a studied singer and some of the musicians, I tend to not listen to most of the stuff that's on R&B today, you know, because it doesn't, thank you, Mrs. G, my wife. No, I'm still doing it. My wife says, hello.
Hi, tell her I'll let you go in 10 or 15 minutes.
But there's, you know, it's the beauty of the music. And, you know, most of the music that I would listen to doesn't have singers on it. It's the Henry Mancini's, the Nelson Riddle albums, because I admire musicians more than I do singers. Always have. But the singers that I admire, they have to have that quality in their voice, or I'm not listening.
Is it the musician thing because it's something that's not so easy to you as singing is? So you kind of really admire that a little bit more?
Well, musicians, they can play things that singers can't do, you know. The quality in a singer's voice is what I go for. But musicians, it's the arrangers who knock me out. And the great musicians, like when I heard Mr. Costa on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, just the technical parts of it, where he's doing all these, I'm like, wow, wish I could do that. But I admire them, you know, for their technique.
You know, what's amazing, Jim, is you come across these people. I mean, you've named a lot of people that are sort of like, you know, not exactly like center superstars or big on the radar.
Yeah.
So many of the greatest talents are not superstars, or not. They're
not superstars.
Yeah, and I think of when I was much younger, and I caught like Roy Clark on TV, like on whatever show that was.
Roy. Yeah.
I mean, Roy Clark was killing it. And
yeah,
like,
Roy was incredible, man.
Yeah, and there's so many cats like that, you know, that
yeah.
If you follow, you know, a certain genre of music, maybe you're blind to them, you know.
Well, I'm into the technicians and guys who have studied, and they're the ones that I admire more than anybody, and especially people like Art Tatum and Hazel Scott, Oscar Peterson. Oh my goodness. People who, you know, they really have things that nobody else has. So, you know, I just admire them, and I want to be like them.
Well, you and me both. I mean, I can't even sing, so you know.
Well, I appreciate the great singers and people with that quality in their voice. And I studied from a young age trying to develop that quality. And I think I may have developed enough of it where it kept me working all these years. So that's me.
How like calculated were you in sort of mapping out your career that way? I mean, did things just kind of fall into place, or did you really like kick back and think, you know what, I got to make sure that I cover this base and do that? And you know, how planned was it versus just fell into place for you?
Well, I was always told to do what you love. And what I loved was when I was a teenager, or even before then, I used to listen to the radio. And I would hear groups like the Spinners, and I remember one of the first tunes that I fell in love with was That's What Girls Are Made For. And that was a group called the Spinners. And the harmonies that they put in that song, it was like they might as well have been a woman, even so, because I loved it so much that I started listening to every song on the radio. And believe it or not, when I was a youngster, I fell in love with harmony. And that was being done by mostly the white singers. And, they would do 4 parts, 5 parts, and just the blend of their voices together. When I would listen to it, I was just in love. And I appreciated it. And I knew that in my career, I had to do what I loved in order to succeed. So I love music.
Are you talking with the harmonies? Are you talking about things like Mamas and Papas, or even before that?
Oh, way before them.
Yeah.
I'm going way back to the 30s, the 20s.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
The Andrews sisters and, a lot of the singers that were doing, the 4 Freshmen, the harmonies and stuff, not just 3 parts. And see, Motown was a letdown because they had the Supremes, but all they were doing was just 2-part harmonies. And me, I wanted it fat. Give me some harmony. So, but it helped me to work with Quincy Jones because he loved harmony too. And that's my thing, is the harmony.
And Stevie Wonder, he would do all his vocal overdubs and do his own harmonies.
That's the way he was. That's why I admired him so much, because he would do all the parts by himself. And I sat here one day in my studio and did an entire choir by myself. The whole part, bass, soprano, alto, tenor. And I did the whole choir, and I changed my voice, the tone in it, to try it so it wouldn't sound like one voice, and just tried to do a choir by myself.
How'd it turn out?
Oh, it turned out great. The Japanese people loved it because I did it for a company in Japan.
Oh. Wow. Do you have recording equipment in your little studio there?
Oh yeah, I record on the Mac.
Uh-huh.
And now that I have so many different tracks, I started out with 4-track, went to an 8-track, 16, 24, now the computer. So I can sit here and record anytime I want. I've written over 600 tunes.
Wow.
And I've recorded 60 of them with just me alone.
What are you going to do with them?
Well, I'm going to take some of my songs over to this publishing company that puts them in movies. And that's what I'm doing. And then there are other people. Lil Anthony recorded some of my songs, 4 of my tunes on their last CD.
Okay.
So I'm trying, I guess it was the influence of Stevie Wonder. It was his influence.
Do you still keep in touch with Stevie much nowadays?
Yeah, I keep more in touch with his brother Milton than I do him. But I still see Steve. I just saw him Tuesday.
Looking back, Jim, what would you say out of everything that you're most proud of?
I am most proud of my teaching. I teach 2 days a week at a school here in LA. I teach piano, guitar, and sight reading to young students. And I feel, and then on top of that, I feel more, I guess I was impressed with myself when I started helping singers. Because I've been teaching sight reading for over 40 years, free of charge to any singer that wanted. It wasn't about the money. And I was showing them what it took to be in my position. And there's no such thing as a clique. It's people who study.
Have any of them gone on to pursue a music career?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of them working in the background singing world today.
Wow, that must feel great.
Well, I feel good about that because I wasn't greedy and I didn't care that much about money. I just wanted to help others, you know.
Give back.
Yeah, give back to the community because I was a singer.
Do you have any regrets looking back on your career, that maybe something you wish you had done or done differently?
Not really. No regrets.
That's how you want it.
Yep.
And what is something that you'd still like to accomplish?
One thing I'd like to accomplish is learn how to play every instrument in the band.
Have you tried horns and things like that?
Yeah. You know, I'm recording the guitar, the piano, the bass, the drums, but I want to learn to play the trumpet, the saxophone, I want to learn to play it all. So I study.
Do you have any horns there?
No, not yet, but I'm about to get a trumpet and a saxophone and start learning.
Yeah. How's Mrs. G feel about that?
She goes, I don't see you that much. You're always studying. I go, well, that's my life, honey. I have to study. And, you know, I can't help it. I just feel like a hungry person, but hungry for knowledge of music. I know I'll never be able to do it all before I die, but I just feel hungry for it. And I'm going to keep going until I die.
Yeah. Wow. I admire that, Jim.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very cool. You know, you see so many people that as they get older, they think, oh, that's kind of it for me, you know, and I've done what I'm going to do, and why do something new? So the fact that you're still doing that kind of thing is just fantastic.
Well, I feel great about the studying part of it. It's wonderful. Keeps me busy.
Yeah. So tell the folks out there, you know, how they can keep up with what you're doing, that show that you're involved with. You know, are you doing performances now or upcoming, or how can they enjoy you and keep up with you?
Well, I'm in a group called The Originals. They were on Motown. Baby, I'm For Real, The Bells. And I sing with them. And I've even done shows in Las Vegas. I went out and sang with the Funk Brothers. The guy by the name of Jack Ashford let me have most of those original Motown tracks. And I sit here and work with them, and I'll do shows every now and then with those tracks. You know, from My Girl to you name it. All the old Motown songs, and especially the Four Tops and Temp songs. But I've been to Vegas and done a hotel singing on tracks from Motown, because everybody still loves Motown. So.
Mm-hmm.
But I still go do stuff like that, and if James Taylor ever called me again to go out on the road with him, I'd go right right there. Love James Taylor.
Well, it's great. He's still doing it too.
Yeah, James is still out there doing it. And he doesn't play anything but the huge auditoriums. You know, I don't think he played any place that had less than 25,000 in the crowd when I was on the road with him.
Yeah, I remember hearing my older sister was big into him when I was growing up as a kid, hearing, you know, all that Fire and Rain and all those songs. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a whole ton of them, and I'm really proud of the guy. I love him, and I appreciate him asking me to go on the road with him. You know, it's wonderful. So I still go out with the originals. If Quincy ever needed me, I'd be out there. Even Stevie, I'd go out on the road with him if he ever wanted me to.
Excellent. Well, I think we've covered an amazing 50-year career as best we can. I mean, wow, unbelievable, Jim. Thank you so much for sharing it with me and sharing it with my viewers, and thank you so much for all you've contributed to music for all of us to enjoy so much over these years.
Well, thank you for asking me to do that. You know, I don't mind it at all.
And thank you also for persevering with little technical challenges we had, but we got through it.
That's a lack of knowledge, technical knowledge on my part. That's okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Not only was he a pleasure to talk to, but learning more about his life and his encyclopedia-like musical knowledge was just tremendous. So as we wrap up this edition of Truth and Rhythm, another huge thanks to my special guest, Mr. Jim Gilstrap, arguably the most accomplished session singer of his generation. Also, sincere thank you to the viewers and listeners. Be sure to be on the lookout for upcoming Truth and Rhythm episodes and catch up with previous installments at funkinstuff.net on YouTube, iTunes, and other leading podcast providers. And we want to hear from you. Drop us a line. Write me at scottg@funkinstuff.net. Let me know what you like, who you want to see. I've been getting a lot more emails lately, and I really appreciate it. Some great feedback from everybody. Lastly, please subscribe to Truth and Rhythm. If you've already done so, please get friends and family to subscribe. It's all about keeping that Truth and Rhythm party train rolling, to keep the funk, jazz, R&B, soul music, memories, legacies, artists, the great music, keep it alive, support it. Much appreciated. So with that, until next time, this is Scott Dr. GX saying, keep on vibrating to the rhythm of the one.